Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast via the Field of 68. I'm Sam Lance, joined by my co-host Jackson Bezdek, and as you can see, we have a very special guest today. Jeff Goodman, the co-founder of the Field of 68, is here with us to discuss what he's seen from the Jayhawks this season. We'll get into all of that right up next. All right, Jeff, welcome to the Hum, and thank you so much for joining us. I think this is the first time we've had you on the show. First things first, how are you doing, Jeff? Jackson and I, we've been really cold lately. He's in Ames, and I'm in Lawrence, where we have a blizzard warning. Are you somewhere warm, Jeff?
I am. Well, warmer. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. We're down here for most of the winter. Actually, we go to Florida for 6 weeks. We sold our house in Boston at the end of July, and we don't know what we're doing. We don't know. We're just, it's my wife and I, daughter's in college, so we could do this. We don't have a dog right now, so we just decided to kind of figure out whether we want to move to Charleston. So we've been looking for a place. I haven't found anywhere yet to buy, but it is 63 degrees today, and I'm glad I'm not in Boston. Although I guess they didn't get hit back home. They didn't get hit in Boston with snow, but you guys got hammered.
Yeah. Yep. Enjoy it, Jeff. I would kill for 60 degrees right now. Well, let's get into why you're here, and that's the Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas preseason number one. Haven't exactly lived up to it so far. And, I'm an avid After Dark listener. A bunch of you guys after the West Virginia game were kind of saying, the panic button is being hit. And honestly, Bez and I were hitting it too. But then yesterday happened. Kansas, largest Big 12 road victory in Big 12 conference history against UCF on Sunday. What did you just kind of make of that performance? And does that change your opinion on the Jayhawks?
No, it doesn't change it at all. I think their issues are their issues, and to some degree they can get better or less. But, again, we looked at it in the offseason. We were like, okay, you know what? Bill did and his staff did what they needed to do. They added shooters. They added a shot creator. Well, the shooters, Zeke Mayo's been good. Ryland Griffin, until last game, has been very inconsistent. And the biggest key for me was AJ Storr. Just hasn't done anything. And they're praising behind closed doors. They like him as a kid. And that was, part of the hesitation, like with him in the portal, there were some questions about him character-wise. And those haven't been an issue at all. They love him as a kid, as a worker. He just hasn't been able to find his way on the court. And I feel like sometimes it takes time to be like deprogrammed sometimes by Bill and his staff. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but they need him back quickly. And they played him a little bit more, obviously, in the game against, but you can play anybody in that game. They were up by 100. I just feel like they gotta find a way, because they're a different team if they can get the AJ Storr that he was at, Wisconsin, get him involved, doing some of the things they need him to do. So I think, again, they can be better, but ultimately it still comes down to like, well, if you're going to have your three players on the court, DeJuan, Hunter, and KJ, you're still going to have the same issues that you're going to have. Like, there's nothing you can do about that, because KJ is not going to turn into a floor spacer. DeJuan's not a floor spacer, and Hunter's not really a floor spacer. So ultimately, you can put any two guys you want on the court, and I think it needs to be your best opportunity there would be AJ and one of Zeke, probably Zeke, over Ryland.
100%. And I think these next 2 weeks especially are really important for Kansas, especially off this UCF win. What are you specifically looking for to where, like you said, the issues are still the issues, but over these next couple weeks, what do you see? How can Kansas solve these issues to maybe get them back into that Final Four type conversation?
You got to play AJ. I just think you got to play him. If you like him and you like what he's done in practice and is working hard, and play him. It's one of those things where, again, I get you want to win every game, but Bill's been doing this long enough to understand like winning every game's great, but you're playing for March. And if you go in with this team currently the way it's constituted, you're not winning a national title. And yeah, you get to the second weekend, maybe you can get to the Final Four. Like I get Flory does some things that KJ can't, right? He's bigger, he's longer, he's a lob threat, he can block more shots, all of that. But ultimately, Flory's not a floor spacer either. So you're going to have some of the same offensive issues, other than the fact that, yes, he is a guy that DeJuan can throw the ball to, throw it up, and he can go and get it. KJ can too, to some extent. And Flory, he makes up for a lot of Hunter's inabilities on the defensive end, right? That's the biggest thing that I think Flory does is Hunter, obviously you put him in some tough spots that he's not comfortable defensively and he can't recover as well. Well, Flory, from the weak side, man, he's freakish. He is freakish.
100%. Let's just talk about KJ Adams, Jeff. Let's just get right into it.
Yeah.
The way that we've seen work to guard KJ Adams is just park his guy in the block.
Yep.
Park him in the paint, sag off of him completely. Yep. So, UCF didn't do that at all. At all. Do you think other Big 12 teams are going to start doing that, like West Virginia? And just general KJ Adams thoughts, because that's the big complaint from all our fans over here.
And it's so fair. Like, it's so hard because, again, everybody loves KJ. Like, how can you not, right? Like, he is the ultimate team guy, and he's the nicest kid you will ever meet. And he plays hard as shit. So, like, everything's there. He just doesn't fit with these guys, right? Like, he just doesn't. And he's the one that I would say ultimately, if you brought him off the bench, and he'd probably be fine with it, guys. He probably would be okay with it. Again, I just don't think – I'm not sure Flory answers everything you need him to answer on the offensive end. Like, defensively, yes, you're definitely going to be better. Although Flory, as we saw in that West Virginia game, you get him switched out on a guard like that as a freshman big, he's probably going to make a mistake there. He's not ready. Like, I don't know if KJ would have made the same mistake of leaving his feet on that one. So, yeah, I probably would say at some point, again, for me, for my money, I might, and again, defensively, you're not going to be as good, but I might try a lineup of AJ, Zeke, obviously DeJuan, AJ, Zeke, Hunter, somebody else who could stretch it a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I think you gotta play around with this here and try to figure it out in the next month.
The lineup that all the Kansas fans are wanting is the DeJuan, Zeke, AJ, Ryland, and Hunter Dickinson, or instead.
How much have they played that? Have they played that like at all?
It feels like zero. It literally
AJ and Ryland, I think, have been on the court together for like 48 minutes going into the UCF game, so not very often at all.
I know. I would like to see it too. I don't know why Bill hasn't tried it, just to see what it looks like, especially against certain teams. Again, I understand you might need to be bigger and more physical against certain teams, but man, that lineup offensively could allow you to do some things. Now, again, defensively, they might be completely outclassed.
We wanted to ask you about Flory a little bit more in depth here, Jeff. We're kind of tabbing this past week as the week of the Flory. Does his emergence change anything for you about this team? I think Kansas' ceiling, I think it might go up a little bit here. Flory, it was his first game against UCF, playing over 20 minutes per game. I'd expect him to play 20 plus probably from here on out.
I think you're right. I mean, again, it depends. Can he stay out of foul trouble, number one? The first time I saw Flory on the circuit, I was blown away by his skill level. I really was. Like, I didn't see that coming. And then last summer, I didn't feel like he took much of a step forward on that end of the court. Like, I felt like, okay, you know what? Like, he passed it so well 2 years ago for somebody who had just gotten into the country and just started playing. I was blown away. I still think he kind of is what he is for the most part, which is, again, more of a lob threat. You're not going to want him stepping out and shooting from 15, 18 feet too often. I think he can make them, but that's not what he does well yet. So, yes, again, he gives you some things that KJ doesn't, more on the defensive end because of his length. And offensively, he adds an extra dimension. Again, not that you could throw it up to KJ and he'll catch alley oops. It's just it's a different level for Flory. He's just bigger, strong. Not stronger, but more athletic, like bouncier, and he's a freak in terms of how he can block shots. Obviously he had what do you have 5 or 6 against UCF.
6.
That I guess that's the biggest dynamic, right? Is defensively what he gives you is different than what KJ gives you, but offensively, I don't know if it's that different. I don't.
Kansas is up to number 5 on KenPom in the defensive metric. So things are kind of looking up there. We've talked about AJ Storr a little bit, but I want to ask you about Ryland Griffin now. Kansas, bringing in the 2 highly touted transfers hasn't exactly translated. They played well against UCF, but everybody played well against UCF. And Bez and I, again, we couldn't tell you what the heck UCF was doing defensively, what they scouted Kansas to be. Just what's your thoughts on Ryland Griffin? How does he get consistent run with Bill Self, and how scary can Kansas be once Ryland starts getting going, and then of course AJ as well?
If not once, if they get going, I think that's the biggest thing. I don't think it's now like some formality that these guys are going to be so much better. We heard Bill talk about it, that it takes time, and I think if one of them can come through and be that weapon on the offensive end, I think it's AJ. I just do. I think, again, you get enough shooting out of Zeke, you're fine, and you can bring Ryland off the bench and give you 50. Listen, it's not like Alabama was so upset losing Ryland Griffin. He's a nice piece. That's what he is. But, again, I think you know what you're going to get out of Zeke now. You know what you're going to get. Bill and the staff trust him. He's going to make shots. He's going to move the ball. But what AJ can do is different because they don't get to the line. I mean, that's the other part, guys, is Kansas just doesn't get to the line enough. And, part of it is these spot-up shooters. Part of it is non-shooters. Part of it is Hunter is so quick to get rid of the ball in the post. So he doesn't get fouled that much because, a lot of bigs work in there. They work slow. They end up getting fouled, right? Doubled, whatever it is. Hunter, by the time they try to double him, he's already gotten rid of the ball. So they just don't get to the line enough. They need to do that more. And again, AJ Storr is a guy who can do that. He can do that. And I just think he's the guy that if I'm Bill in these next 8 games, you got to find a way to just live with them. Live with some of the mistakes, live with some of the things that maybe you're that are driving you crazy about him that aren't getting him on the court, and just say like, hey, that's our best chance to get to that next level. That to me is clear. But again, there's a reason Bill's a Hall of Famer, and I've never coached a game.
Let's jump right into Hunter Dickinson. Just in general, what do you think of his season so far? The numbers at times have not been the Hunter Dickinson numbers that we've been accustomed to. But like we said earlier, people are sagging off of KJ. He's had 3 guys on him at times. So what have you seen out of him? And, preseason All-American, do we think he's living up to that, even close to it?
Probably not. I mean, again, he's still putting up 16 and 10. All right. Like if that's a bad year, that's still pretty good, right? I mean, he's still, again, I think the hardest thing for him is on the defensive end. He's limited. He's limited physically what he can do on that end of the court. And, he's not a big rim protector, although, he'll block a shot here or there, but that's not his strength. I think the hard part again is like, do you have the right guys around him? Have you had the right? That's what you have to do. They've gotten better at that. I think he's got better guys around him, but still not the ideal. It's funny when I remember talking to Hunter when he went through the whole portal process, and we were talking about it, and I'm like thinking to myself of like, man, DeJuan and Hunter, like talk about a big and who you want to play with as a point guard. It's going to be like electric. It'll make it so easy. And it has to some extent, except, again, you don't have as much space in there to work with because you have a bunch of, last year was even worse, some guys that you're not going to guard out there, frankly. You're sagging off. Like you said, when KJ and Dwan are in the game, it's far more difficult to, number one, get Hunter the ball. And then when he gets the ball, he does not have a lot of space to work with or time, so he's got to rush some shots.
All right, guys, we will take a quick break here. When we're back, we'll have Jeff give some quick thoughts on the Kansas's next opponent, Arizona State, and just some overall thoughts on the Big 12. Stay with us, y'all.
The best month of the year is here, which is why you need to know that we are partnered with BetMGM. We'll be using BetMGM lines for making all of our picks and predictions, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's the best part. All you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your hard-earned money to get it. This is what you have to do to make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll get up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. Most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the rest of the NCAA tournament. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boost, and the thing that I love the most, a nice little parlay boost, as well as a ridiculous array of prop bets for anything that you could possibly imagine betting on. From odds on getting to the Final Four to national championship futures, I'm calling it right now. BetMGM is the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app. Use that code FIELD and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the pod in any podcast app. Like and share the YouTube videos that you enjoy. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show. There is no sport in America that is more difficult to follow than college basketball. It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for injury updates, recruiting news, and transfer portal additions that actually matter. For just $50 a year, get access to the same information that your favorite team's coaching staff is subscribed for. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help you with that.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast. We got Arizona State rolling into town on Wednesday, Jeff. They're 10-3 on the season with wins over Santa Clara, Grand Canyon, New Mexico, St. Mary's, and Colorado. They lost to Gonzaga, Florida, and then BYU in the Big 12 opener. This is all good for number 57 and KenPom number 52 in the net. But what do you just know about this team, Jeff, and what do Kansas fans need to look out for?
I mean, Bobby Hurley's done a nice job this year for the most part, right? Like he's fighting for his job, and they've gotten off to a pretty good start. I mean, obviously, they almost beat Gonzaga earlier in the year on the road. They've beaten some good mid-major plus type teams, right? Santa Clara, Grand Canyon were good. Beat New Mexico. St. Mary's was a hell of a win. Their losses are fine, other than the BYU one, and that's on the road. So there's no shame in losing at BYU. He's done a really good job of mixing in a couple of talented freshmen and some transfers and they didn't have a ton. I mean, they had some money, but not crazy money. They were fortunate. They got the Josan Sanon kid who decommitted from Arizona. When Caleb Love came back, Sanon decommitted and ended up at Arizona State in the late get. And he's been, super talented wing who shot it pretty well this year, much better than I think people thought as a freshman. But, some of these guys that he's brought in, these transfers, in the past didn't work out as much, but he got the kid from Ball State's been awesome. Bashir Jihad, he's been their probably most consistent player this year, I would say. So he's found a good mix of young guys and veterans through the portal. And the kid Quaintance has been solid, like good. He paid him a lot of money, and he's a very young freshman who's got to stay 2 years to be eligible for the NBA draft. But I mean, he's a monster. Like you look at his body, and you're like, how is this kid 17 years old? He is a man-child, and plays hard and averaging about 9 points, 8 rebounds. So they've got a lot of weapons, and obviously you knew Kansas was going to be pissed off in that Central Florida game. Like you knew they were going to be ready for that one after being embarrassed at home. I'm sure that was a rough week for a lot of the Kansas players, but this one will be interesting just because, again, you're talking about a team that now do you take lightly a little bit? You're at home, and they shouldn't, because last time they did that at home, they lost.
We saw against UCF, Kansas kind of had that front court advantage with Flory and Hunter down low, and they really posed their will. Do you see kind of a similar theme in this game, or do you think Quaintance will be able to hold up a little bit?
I think it's going to be tough for him to stay out of foul trouble. A young kid like that going against a couple veteran bigs. It depends. Like Flory will probably, again, play 20 minutes in this one, I would think. And that'll be a fun matchup. But, you're talking about putting a guy like Quaintance on Hunter. That could get ugly.
I'm personally pretty tired of watching Kansas lose at home, Jeff. It's gotten way too normal the past few seasons. Growing up, it was a catastrophe if Kansas ever lost at home, and now it's normal. And I'm pretty sick and tired of it. And just this Big 12, I don't
You're
think
spoiled, man. You are so spoiled.
I know. I am happily spoiled though.
I
That
know.
is the
It's
thing.
like, you think about this. It could be worse. So I grew up in Boston, and I'm older, but like my nephews and a lot of guys I played ball with on a softball team, they're like in their mid-20s. And they're used to the Patriots just like dominating. And now the Patriots absolutely stink, and they're so frustrated. They're like, yeah, get rid of Gerard Mayo. And they did, after obviously after 1 year. And I'm like, you guys are so spoiled. You don't even understand. And that's kind of how you guys are with Kansas at home.
It's feeling like that slightly. And there's I don't think there's a bad team in the Big 12 this year. Just
Yeah.
not there's a couple below maybe. Where do you think Kansas eventually ends up finishing in these Big 12 standings?
I mean, there's not a lot of separation right now, right? Like I think Iowa State's probably the best team in the Big 12, which is crazy to say, but like they did a great job on the portal. They obviously had a core coming back, right? And their pieces now fit together even better from an offensive standpoint, adding Joshua Jefferson, specifically from St. Mary's. I don't think West Virginia can withstand this, guys. I just don't. I think they're going to fall off. And I think Tucker DeVries, who knows if he plays another game. I know they beat Kansas without him and Hansberry, but yeah, I think they fall off. So I think it's Iowa State, Houston, Kansas to me at the top. Those three are clear for me at the top, and I could see it coming down to the final week or of the season. But I think that's the top tier for me, and then probably Arizona down a notch. I mean, we've seen Baylor's not great right now. The league's not as good as we thought it would be. It's not this year. It's good, really good. The SEC has obviously been dominant.
Jeff, how many losses do you think the Big 12 champion will have this season?
I mean, I would think 5. I would say 5. I mean, I just don't know how they're going to get away with under 5. It's just so hard to win on the road in this league that you look at even Iowa State's gotten off to a good start so far. Okay, so you look at their schedule coming up. They have Utah at home, then they got to go to Texas Tech. Look at these road games. So they get at Texas Tech, that'll be a tough one. At Arizona, tough one. At Kansas, that's 3. At Houston, that's 4. So maybe 4, and they'll probably lose 1 at home, or maybe they lose at Kansas State in the final game of the year, something like that. So I'd say 4 or 5 for a team like Iowa State.
All right, Jeff, last thing before we get you out of here. Where is Kansas going to end up this season? We want you to predict. Where do you think they end up? Is it Sweet 16 for you? Is it Elite 8? I said last episode, to the moon, back to the Final Four. Final Four is back in the picture, but what do you think?
So again, I was really, really, really high on them going into the year. And I
Everybody
just
was.
want to see where they're at a month from now. Because right now I wouldn't put them in my Final Four right now. I would not. And not to say they can't get there depending on matchups, but I just there are teams I like more than them. There are 4 teams I like more than Kansas today. But again, it's going to be interesting to see the adjustments that Bill makes, especially with the lineup and the roster, with Flory playing a little bit more now. And can you get AJ involved a little bit more and Ryland? But listen, you're never going to count out a Bill Self-coach team with 3 veterans, with 3 guys that are about winning and about the right thing. So, like, again, would it shock me if they go to the Final Four? No. It would surprise me now, I think, if they win it all. I think it would surprise me where I never would have said that even a month ago. But now after watching them, I'm just like, all right, they do have their – but every team's got its flaws. That's what I'll say. It's like, okay, everybody's so high on Auburn right now in Tennessee.
I
I don't think
love
there's a
watching.
big gap. Yeah, I don't think there's a big gap, guys. They've got their flaws too. I saw Auburn lose at Duke. They're talented. Tennessee, I think Duke's really good. I think Alabama's in that top tier as well. So, yeah, I think they can get there. I think they're in the next tier today. And but again, there's still. I mean, we're talking. What are we? We're January 6th right now. I mean, we got 2 months. We got a lot of time left before the regular season ends. So let's see what Bill Self can do here to kind of tinker with the roster, with the lineups, with matchups, everything like that, and maybe take an L. I don't mind taking an L at this point instead of being a number 1 seed or even a 2. You're a 3 at the end of the day. If you put yourself in a position where you're in a better position in terms of like you feel better about your group going into into March.
All right, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Hum at Kansas Hoops Podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And we're
I
going to
love what you
grinding
guys have
out.
done. Listen, before we go, I love what you guys have done. We brought you guys on to do this, and you guys have been unbelievable in terms of how you approach it, how hard you guys work, and again, doing a great job with it. Sam, obviously, we've gotten a chance to talk in person about this. You are the ultimate grinder. Keep doing what you're doing. Jackson, same thing. Just keep working. And hopefully we help you out here a little bit, but you've also helped out the Field of 68 a ton with what you've done with this pod. And again, just your work ethic. You don't see it as much these days as I think you did. So you guys stand out for how diligent you've been and how much you follow it, and not just Kansas, with everything.
Well, I appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We will see you guys after the Arizona State game, giving a little wrap up of Arizona State, and then we'll preview